Now, I'm going to start this off with a lighthearted question. So a lot of us are students and we're all interested in poli-sci, especially in the Model UM Club. And we were wondering, how did your start of politics, like what got you intrigued into it?
Well, for all my life I have voted, so when an election was coming I would study up on the issues, then I would research the candidates, and then I'd go and vote. And I was taught that from an early age. My dad actually ran for Congress when he was in his early 40s, and he ran as a Republican in Minnesota, and so politics was always around. My dad cared, but I was in the military for most of my adult life, so 24 years, and my first identity is always as an American, and it always will be. But when the 2016 elections occurred, like I said, when I was up there, I was recovering from surgery, and I had time to really take it in. And I became so deeply concerned about the rhetoric and the direction that was being advocated by people that got elected, and so I joined the Democratic Party and got involved in a lot of things after that, and politics is how you get things done. So essentially, politicians are the advocates for their constituents, and I'm an advocate, and so it's kind of a natural fit.
Starting off with our now political questions, Northern Wisconsin has seen an act of violence at the Antigo High School and credible threats of violence at other high schools in the past few years. And how do you intend to make schools safer in the coming years?
Fundamentally, our gun regulations are broken, and the culture surrounding guns has been completely hyped up, and there's a lot of money flowing into this topic, and our Congress, unfortunately, is gridlocked. And even though we have these horrible events at schools, churches, public places, concerts, nothing happens. So we need to only elect people and demand of the people that are already there, our representatives, to do something about it. We need the political will. Because if you look at the polling data out there of Americans, we actually agree on a lot of these issues, like background checks and military style weapons and limiting magazine sizes. You name it, there's a lot of agreement. But what's happened here is our Congress is not responding to the actual people anymore, and that's one of the reasons I'm running.
And then do you feel any hyped up security at schools itself is needed at all, or should it just all be gun control regulation? Or does further action need to be taken place at schools?
We need to look at this from every angle. First of all, we need to study gun violence. The CDC, Centers for Disease Control, was actually prohibited from studying gun violence for a long time. And that is just, unfathomable, really. So we need to study the issue, but we do know we can learn from other countries. Now, our country is different than others, but we can learn from other countries. We can look at the data we do have, and we need to have a multi-pronged approach. So regulations is just one prong of it. We also need to make sure that we fund properly mental health services. We need to be responsible for the words and actions that we say, and that hold our leaders accountable when they're turning up the heat on the rhetoric. As far as school safety, we do need security. Are we going to put guns in schools? I'm completely against that, and I don't want to live in a society where we're putting up barriers and we're all carrying guns. That is not the America I want to live in.
Yeah, I agree. And also another thing in northern Wisconsin, there's an overdose of opioid epidemic. 15.8 people out of 100,000 people from Wisconsin die from opioid overdoses, in contrast to 13.3 as a national average. Even though Wisconsin doctors prescribe less opiates than the national average, how are you going to prevent Wisconsinite opioid deaths?
This is one of those really complicated topics, and it's opioids, there's methamphetamine, there's alcoholism, there are domestic violence incidents, and there's poverty, and all of these things work together. And that's why it is absolutely vital we start valuing our people, our citizens, as the most precious resource we have, because they are. Because these are symptoms of a greater problem. Now, specifically about the opioid deaths, a lot of things have contributed to that. One is pharmaceutical companies have pushed it on doctors, and then our healthcare system, doctors feel an incentive to overprescribe, and that's but one aspect. One of the other aspects is that we have a chronic pain problem in this nation, and that's because a lot of us have worked, with our bodies a lot. That's why I had to have shoulder surgery. I've been hard on my body. I was an electrician, heavy equipment operator. And it's also repetitive injuries, people that, maybe use keyboards and stuff like that. Our labor is hard on our bodies. So we need to have a more holistic treatment option instead of just painkillers. So that, we've got to get at these root issues to address it.
Moving back to high schools, so a big topic nowadays is e-cigarettes and vaping, especially kids all across the nation have noticed that it's just become out of proportion. It's a real issue even here at Lakeland. So how do you plan to combat the underage use of these e-cigarettes, like vaping devices?
I'm going to be honest with you, I have not read the regulations on these vaping. I just know that there's been this huge rise in the use of it. I haven't studied that particular issue.
Mm-hmm.
But it is important because it seems like an emerging issue that is going to get worse.
Mm-hmm. And then also, Wisconsin ranks 10th in the nation for the number of college students with debt. How do you plan to make college more affordable and or lower the growing debt that Wisconsin students are having?
It's a crisis.
Yeah.
So I'm one of those unusual people. I'm in my 40s and I am burdened by student loan debt, and that's because I served in the military first and I worked to save money. I went to college at 29, law school at 36. I am saddled with such debt. So I am living that, and it is a frightening experience. It is extremely frustrating to have our occupations out there not paying us what we're worth, to even balance out the loans we take. So public financing, we need to increase the ratio of that versus how much students are responsible for. There are some folks that are advocating for free tuition to college. I am not quite there yet. I know there's some really compelling arguments for that, but there is a lot we can do. But we benefit from the education that people get, because once they go out into the workforce, they're building value and they're creating wealth and making life better for all of us. So we need to invest in that.
And going along with jobs and kind of thinking about what people are making, for every dollar that a man makes in Wisconsin, a woman makes 77 cents. What plans do you have to reduce this gap and give Wisconsin equal pay for equal work?
Well, I'm running for federal office, so one of the things we need to do is make sure that we keep our institutions and our agencies strong, like the EEOC and these institutions that make sure that there's equality. And we need to live it, we need to create a culture that demands it. And as far as Wisconsin statutes go, I'm sure that there are legislators that would be more than happy to try to progress that down the road. In fact, I have a lot of classmates that I went to Emerge Wisconsin with, a lot of nice women running for Assembly and Senate right now, and one for treasurer, and I hope that they advance that for you in Wisconsin.
There's a substantial population of senior citizens in this area. How do you plan to provide care to these citizens, specifically in the areas of Medicare availability and nursing home regulations?
Unfortunately, our whole system is kind of breaking down. What's happened here is that a lot of folks have entered into retirement, our pension systems have been under attack, our unions have been under attack, and our Social Security system is actually bearing a lot more of the load of making sure that our senior citizens are taken care of, as well as Medicare. Because as things become so expensive, like nursing home care and private insurance companies and private companies that run these assisted living and nursing homes, is just outrageously expensive. And that's what I'm talking about, our healthcare costs are absolutely out of control. So we need to transition to a Medicare for all public health insurance program so that we can actually bring down costs across our entire healthcare system. And we also need to make sure that our seniors are able to save and get enough so that they can live comfortably and with dignity later on in life.
And then another thing, there has been this thing called the Lynn Mine. It wants to open like a couple miles from us. It's going to be by the Willow Flowage. It's going to open a lot of job opportunities. However, it will significantly damage our natural resources around here. And how do you protect the surrounding environment in place of the mine?
Right, so this is another state issue, but it is absolutely vital for every Wisconsinite. Because when you do sulfide mining in a water-rich environment like this, Lynn Mine is actually, the deposit is below water. So how do you get at that deposit without contaminating the water? It's not been done, and if they do develop technologies to do it, it's cost prohibitive. And that's why these companies want to pressure our politicians to roll back these environmental regulations so that they can come after our natural resources and leave the mess behind. I actually question whether or not this is a job creator, because how many folks around here know how to mine?
Not
Right?
many, exactly.
There are folks that will probably come in here specialists. Mining is a specialty. Blasting and quarry operations was my specialty in the Seabees and the Navy. It takes a lot of training, a lot of specialty, and as far as after the mine is done, where are the jobs? So it's a cost benefit, and we need to protect ourselves, protect our resources, protect our people, and protect our water.
Okay.
But thank you
Well, thank
so
you so much for cooperating.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.